What about her, y'all? This is Jessie Belle Smothers, and you're listening to The Interactive Interview.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Hey guys, welcome to the long overdue edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. The reason it is long overdue is we've had some medical and technical problems. Me personally, I had gastroenteritis, which, that might sound funny to some of you if you know what it is. It ain't funny when you have it, and I'm stubborn as a mule. I refused to go to the doctor until I almost had it turn into colitis, which is a hole in your colon. So I was pretty close to hospital time for this one. I'm feeling much better now. Not 100%, but much better. But that definitely laid me up for quite a few days. And then when I was able to sit at this computer and not on the toilet seat, I was unable to do so because my computer decided to crash. So all things considered, I'm just glad we have all the files and we can bring it to you. And speaking of what we are bringing to you, it is a phenomenal 2-interview set with the lovers. Yeah, we have Jessie Belle Smothers as well as the bad boy Shane Andrews on this show. 2 veterans of Ohio Valley Wrestling. Be sure and check out ovwrestling.com to see their latest ring wars and all past episodes of Ohio Valley Wrestling TV, or at least a whole lot of them anyway. And we hope everybody will enjoy these interviews. It's a lot of fun. On a sad note, not that being sick and my computer dying isn't sad enough, I want to express our condolences and sympathies to the late Joni Chyna Lauer, as well as the late Balls Mahoney. 2 people that were certainly gone before their time. Balls was 44, Joni was 45. Joni had her issues. You could say that it was a drug overdose, but I think we all know she died of a broken heart, and that prognosis came 15 plus years ago, or almost that anyway. Balls Mahoney, I don't want to hear your perspective on it because you don't know. And if that sounds confrontational, it is. So my condolences to Balls Mahoney's family as well as the family of Joni Lauer. And this episode is dedicated to you guys, as will be the Jeff Jarrett interview. And hey, thank you guys for the memories, because without these legends, we would not have the memories that made us wrestling fans in the first place. Anyway, happier note now, let's get to Jessie Belle Smothers. And hey, thank you guys again for tuning in to WrestlingEpicenter.com's Interactive Wrestling Radio. Now let's get to our interactive interviews.
Hey guys, this is Taylor Hendricks, and you are listening to Wrestling Epicenter. Check it out.
There's a place you know, where all your sisters go. It's gonna do you right. This one is for all your crazy daughters every night. I'm talking about the hair-raising women, dressed in black and ready to go. I'm talking about the hair-raising women. I'm talking about you.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line on a late night for us here is OVW Knockouts champion Jessie Belle Smothers. Miss Jessie, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. How are you?
It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks.
All right. So I got a couple questions to ask you, but the first one, everybody always asks the same question, and it's a pretty basic one. How in the world did you end up in this crazy, wacky world of professional wrestling?
Oh, man. There was actually a guy that I had dated and married. 2000, I met him in 2005, and he was a wrestler. And I asked him, I was like, what do you do? And he was like, oh, I'm a wrestler. And I was like, oh, really? Because I ain't never seen you on TV. Because, I was a huge wrestling fan, just didn't know how to get into it. And he was like, no, I do independent wrestling. And I was like, what's that? And so he explained it to me and took me to a show one day. And I'm like, you have to teach me how to do this. And that's what it was.
All right. That's very cool. And, your style has obviously evolved over the years. You've gotten even better than you started out. What is your opinion of how women's wrestling has evolved since even you started in it about a decade ago?
Man, it's so frustrating sometimes to talk about women's wrestling because, I mean, now finally they're starting to be put back in the spotlight on major companies like WWE and TNA, but for a while they were just like a blip on the show, and they got like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and they weren't concerned with talent or
it was essentially a peep show to some degree.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they hired like models or cheerleaders or, just random girls on the way that they looked and not on their love or passion of wrestling or talent in wrestling or talent on the microphone or their character, their persona, their ring presence, their pantomime, like all the stuff that should be the most important. It wasn't anything that was looked at. It was, what does the picture of this person look like? And that's why it was so terrible. And that's also why, like, they couldn't push what they had because they didn't have shit to push. You know what I mean?
Yep. No, I agree with you. And, you debate whether the girls could have gone as long as they go now with the girls that they had back then because they weren't, for the most part, trained wrestlers. Right.
There you know what?
There you go. Well, I introduced you as Jessie Belle Smothers. I know you don't always use the Smothers name, but I wanted to ask you, how did, when you first started and you got to use that last name towards your character, how did that elevate you towards a national awareness in terms of your persona, having the name of the great Tracy Smothers associated with yourself?
Well, let's just start with where it started, and I'll tell you the whole story, the whole truth, and exactly what happened and how it happened. Basically, I had, when I was traveling with the guy that got me into wrestling to begin with, and I was just a manager for like 3 years from late 2005 to the end of 2008. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, we did mainly really small, independent wrestling shows, majority in Kentucky, and then like one in Tennessee and one in Indiana every now and then.
And would I be pushing my luck if I asked who this was? That you
honestly, he's such a terrible person. I don't want to get any brought to light. Like, I don't want to give him any credit for anything.
No, don't worry about it. We won't give him any press. Don't worry about it.
But I had met my pops, Tracy Smothers, at like 4 or 5 different shows over a 3-year span. So, I wasn't an old school wrestling fan at that time. I pretty much came up during the Attitude Era. So I didn't know, I was ignorant to who he was and all that he had done at the point in time when I had met him. So one day I was at my apartment complex and I switched shifts at my job because I usually would work out around 4 or 5 p.m. And I ended up being in the gym at I think it was like 8:30 in the morning, and I see Tracy Smothers. And I'm like, is that him? Because it'd probably been at least a year, and me and the guy that I was with, we had gotten divorced and split up, and it had been at least 6 months, since that happened, and like I said, over a year since I'd seen Pops. And I'm looking at him, and he probably was like, what is wrong with this girl? She keeps staring at me, and I'm in my head debating, like, that's him. I know that's him. Is it him? Oh, he's going to think I'm crazy if it's not him, and I'm debating whether I say something to him or not. Because we're at the gym in my apartment complex. I lived at the park at Hirschborn in Louisville, Kentucky at this point in time. And so he's getting ready to leave at this point. Leave the gym. And I was like, all right, look, I have to ask you something, and I promise I'm not crazy. I was just, are you Tracy Smothers? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm Jessie. And he was like, yeah, you're married to so-and-so. And I was like, yes. And when I had met him on, like, the last show that I did that I'd seen him on, he had me run his merchandise table for him. And he was like, you have a great look, you have a great ring presence, you know, so forth. You're really, you know, you're an attractive girl. You need to go out for Diva Search. Because at this time, you know, at that time, Diva Search is still going on. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to wrestle, you know, like, I haven't done any training. He was like, you ain't got to. And I was like, all right. So I went and told we were still married at the time, so I was telling my husband at that time, I was like, hey, you know, Mr. Smothers said that I should go out for Diva Search. And he was like, no, he doesn't know, he just doesn't know you. He was like, you won't never do it. He was like, you don't know how to wrestle. You're terrible. They're going to laugh at you. You're never going to do anything. He's like, you're lucky to be, yeah, like I said, that was a nicer version of him. So, But basically, so I was just like, okay, I'm not going to do it, you know, because he's telling me I'm going to get laughed at and made a mockery of, you know, whatever. So, but anyway, so I see him and he's like, well, yeah, are you and your men, are y'all still together? And I was like, no, we got divorced. And I was like, but you had mentioned me going out for Diva Search, you know, last year. So I was like, I'd really like to train, you know, like I'm just valeting, I pretty much like, I gone from having small shows to do every weekend to having one, maybe two a month, because my ex-husband was like, if you use her, then you can't use me, and you can't use anybody else from OVW, and blah, blah, blah. Like, so a lot of the promoters not wanting to lose, you know, 3 to 5 wrestlers on their card for one valet. They were like, you know, Jessie Belle, we're really sorry. We can't afford to lose that much talent for you to valet. And, you know, and I get it. You know, I got it. But anyway, so Tracy was like, he was like, yeah, actually, he was like, I'm living here in this complex, and he was living there, and, he was dating, Diane von Hoffman, who was Moondog Fifi, you know, back in the day. And he was like, I'll hook you up with her and blah, 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 and we'll start, you know, getting you some training done. So, I mean, basically, like, she ended up living in the building that was right behind mine, and I was training with her and training with him, and that's pretty much what started my in-ring, you know, my in-ring training. They ended up, breaking up, I think, and he moved away. Me and her had a falling out, and I ended up moving to Louisiana. So when I moved to Louisiana, I furthered my training, found some independent shows around there, hooked up with, people like Brickhouse Brown and, this kid named Frankie Thomas, who trained with Cassidy Riley. And, so like I furthered my training, and I moved back about a year later, and I found Tracy on Facebook, or not Facebook, my bad, MySpace.
MySpace, yeah, probably MySpace at that time, yeah.
And I had given Diane my information for my MySpace, so, cause she said, you know, people are going to try to like book you, and like, you gotta be careful in this business, blah, blah, blah. She was like, I'll make sure, you know, I'm going to take care of you. So I'd given her my information. Well, when we had our falling out, she'd gone on there, and I'm not much of a social media person. I literally just set it up because she asked me to, and I just let her manage it. Right. So I was trying to figure out how to get in contact with Tracy, and I ended up remembering how to log into this MySpace account where Diane von Hoffman had messaged Tracy posing as me, and said all kinds of things, which is pretty awful. But anyway, so I messaged him. I'm like, hey, I was like, I just want you to know that I was like, this is Jessie. I was like, this is actually Jessie. I was like, and all these other messages that have been sent to you, they were not me. And I explained to him, you know, how she had control of the account. And I was like, look, I'm moving back from Louisiana. I've furthered my training a little bit. I was like, but I still really don't know anything. I was like, if I could come and do anything to help you and or like meet you at shows, you know, so you could help train me, I was like, I would be, you know, eternally grateful. And he was like, yeah, and he had apparently taken the last year and a half off. and had no intentions of going back to wrestling, and I didn't know that. He didn't tell me that until after we had, gotten on the road, and there was a few falling outs with some bookings, like the first 3 months, shows kept canceling and stuff kept falling through, and I'd be like, no, don't worry about it, it's all right. You know what? It's going to come together. We're going to do this. It's going to be awesome. And he's like, all right, and so we finally get on the road and we start traveling together, and we're doing shows and, everywhere. I mean, Wednesday through Sunday, sometimes 2 and 3 shows a day, and we're just traveling, and he would get me in the ring, and if there was ever anybody there, doing a seminar, I'd jump in and I'd do those seminars. Well, we run into people like Ricky Morton, like Bobby, like Tommy Rich, like Tommy Dreamer and stuff like that, and I'm doing the Jessie Belle Smothers gimmick just like, the Isabel Smothers gimmick from JCW, and these guys like Ricky Morton and like Tommy Rich, they're like, Tracy, I didn't know you had a daughter, and Pops never, he was like, what? He was like, dude, and like Tommy or Ricky, they'd be like, this girl is just like you when you first started. But he was like, how long has she been in the business? You let your daughter get into the business? So they assumed, without being told, that I was his real kid just by seeing me in the locker room, seeing me in the ring, and hearing me on the microphone. So one day, we're coming back from a loop, and we're headed back from West Virginia, and he's like, look, these people who I've known for, not very long, 20, 25 years, they think you're my real kid. And he's like, and fans, they think you're my real kid. And he's like, look, we started a fire. He's like, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to pour gasoline on it. And those were his words. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, we're going to tell everybody that you're my real kid. And I was like, that's never going to work. I was like, because I've been in wrestling, for I think it was 2010 at this time, and I'd been in since the end of 2005, and I was like, I already know so many people, they know that's not true, that's not going to work. And he was like, look, if you say it's true, and I say it's true, he's like, they can't argue it. And he was like, we'll just, we'll swear it up and down. And he was like, we're going to make them believe it. And I was like, and at first I argued with him, and we had a 10-hour drive. So, I mean, this was a long conversation. I'm giving you basically the quick run of it. But he finally talks me into going with this story. And I'm like, well, I mean, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. So I told him, I was like, I can get a copy of a fraternity test off the internet and just Google image search fraternity test, load it into my computer, go in and Word document it, and literally copy and paste everything and switch the names around, right?
High-tech kayfabe, I like that.
Oh, dude. We did not cut any corners. I ain't kidding. And the thing was, is at that time, I actually cleaned, I did some house cleaning on the side, and I was cleaning for a doctor that worked at Norton Memorial Hospital. So I'm telling the doctor about this, and he's like, well, shoot, why don't you let me print it? I'll take this PDF file, and I'll take it to work. And he's like, and I'll print it off in my office. That way it can come off on official hospital letterhead. He was like, and I'll sign it and put my seal and stuff on it. So if they really look into it, they're going to see that this is signed and notarized and everything by a legit doctor at the hospital that it's on the hospital letterhead for.
Right.
So we have a paternity test that says I'm his daughter, and him swearing that I'm his daughter, and me swearing that I'm his daughter. And when I tell you that we worked, everybody believed it. And we had such a perfect story on how him and my mom had met and what had happened and why we lost each other and and I could tell you that story and break down in tears. There were people who were the biggest skeptics, who I'd known for years, were like, oh my God, that's so amazing. And they were like, we didn't believe you at first, but I mean, we know it's true now. and there's people like Tommy Rich who still won't believe that I'm not Tracy's kid. He's like, no, that's your daughter. She looks just like you. She acts just like you. Y'all work the same. He's like, that's your kid. He's like, you ain't tricking me. We can't tell him that it ain't so. No, but I mean, that's basically, that's how all that came about. He wanted to pour, he was like, we started a fire, we're pouring gasoline on it, and we traveled everywhere and told everybody that.
Awesome. Well, you've traveled all around the country. You've been in Florida. You mentioned Louisiana. Obviously, Kentucky is your home base with Ohio Valley Wrestling. You've left and come back a few times, but what always keeps you coming back to OVW?
I love OVW. I love Danny Davis, Rip Rogers. It's such a great school. It's such a great program. I mean, and it's always under the radar. Like, WWE always knows what's going on there. TNA always knows what's going on there. Please believe every time that we have had somebody come up out of training who had the look and who had everything that it took. Maybe they weren't ring proficient yet because, like, they're brand new to wrestling. But every time we've had somebody that's had the height, the size, the muscle definition, the look of a great athlete, they have been picked off within 1 to 2 episodes on television. They've been pulled up and signed immediately.
Right. I've seen it. Absolutely.
So having people to learn from, like Danny, like Rip Rogers, and just knowing that they're always on the radar, they're always watching, and it's so close to where, it takes me 20 minutes to get there, and it helps me, like, you learn how to work television, you learn how to work with a whole lot of different people, you learn how to work with people with different experience levels in wrestling. What it does is make
you're probably one of the veterans there.
Yeah, I am.
Wow. Yeah, I got to ask you, and please don't take offense, but we saw Ryan Howe on the Gut Check, and we saw Taylor Hendricks on Gut Check, and I kind of was hoping that, when they brought Lady Tapa in and Ivelisse Feliz, that it was going to be Jessie Belle who would get the opportunity on Gut Check, the ill-remembered TNA segment. How come you felt that you never really got the opportunity to try out on Gut Check, and would you have jumped at the opportunity if it was presented to you?
Oh, man, that's a loaded question. I'm going to say that there could be more than one reason. But one reason that I will say that it could be is because at that point in time, I could have been in better physical shape. I could have looked better. You know what I mean? Like, Taylor Hendricks was absolutely in the best shape of her life. She was shredded. She's gorgeous, and so was Ivelisse, and Tapa is just, a force to be reckoned with. You can't look at somebody like Tapa, and like that takes wrestling fans back to the day when women's wrestling was held like hierarchy,
Right.
You look at a woman like Tapa and you're going to be like, I just don't think I want to fight that girl. So
Exactly.
beast. So she absolutely deserved it too. So maybe I had some shortcomings and could have been a little bit more dedicated at the gym. And maybe if my body had been in slightly better shape, because women's wrestling is so extremely at that point in time was still at the extremely superficial level. Maybe that's why.
Now that with the new year, new you, as you post on Facebook a lot, do you think that now, if the opportunity came up, that would be something you would jump at?
Sure. I would definitely give it a shot and go down there. There's lots of insanely talented women like in TNA right now that I would love the opportunity to work with and beat up, every now and then.
What do you think of their current struggles with Impact Wrestling?
Their current struggles with the what wrestling?
I was going to say, what do you think of their current struggles? Like right now, they're having financial troubles. I think it kind of bleeds over onto TV. That you can see that it's not quite as action-packed as maybe it was 3 years ago. What do you think of their current struggles?
I think the best thing that TNA could do is go back and try, like, what made TNA, like, blow up?
X Division, originally.
Who was running the locker room? Who was writing everything? Who was in charge? And what were they doing? Go back to that, and you have so much talent in that locker room that they have no choice but to succeed. So maybe right now they just don't have the best, they're not telling the best story.
Yeah.
They have all the talent in the world. They just need a better story.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about it a little bit a few moments ago with Lady Tapa, but you've had some matches recently with, 2 years ago, not that recently, but fairly recently with Lady Tapa, and I even saw you post a video earlier about a intergender match. I guess my question is, what is it like for somebody like you to get in the ring with somebody who is just so much bigger and more hulking than yourself, and telling that story to make it a believable match to the fans?
You see, that's what I'm good at. And I will attribute all of that to training with Pops and training with Brian Knobs and Mickey Knuckles. I learned so much about telling a story and how to make something make sense, make it believable, and make the people want to either get behind you, or make them hate you, but to make it real. If it was real, could this really happen? Could I really pick up Tapa and body slam her? No, I couldn't. But I really could if I jumped at her, give her a head scissors, give her a hurricane. I really could use my speed, my agility, my flexibility and stuff to come out and win a fight. So whenever I'm in a match like that, that's what I take into consideration. I don't want to be like, oh, let's do this because this is cool. I want to be like, what can we do that if I was watching this, because I am a huge wrestling fan, I'd be like, oh my God, did you see it? I can't believe it. I put a real champion. She really did it.
Exactly. That's right. All right. So we're going to wrap up with a couple more questions, but I have one that's more of a personal question, and it is not that personal, so if it offends you, you have every right to tell me you don't want to answer it. But recently on a Jim Ross podcast, they interviewed Brooke Adams about her relationship with Robbie E. And she says that basically any girls out there who want to date a wrestler, don't do it. You guys are both too self-centered. Now, we all know that you're currently involved with the leader of the Bad Boys Club. And what do you think of those comments? And is there any truth in those whatsoever?
Well, all right. I wouldn't say don't do it because, man, I don't know how to say this right, and I might get, heat for it or whatever. I tell girls all the time that come into wrestling, don't date wrestlers. Because 90% of the time, 95% of the time, they are terrible, terrible people. They're terrible human beings. They have different girls in every town, and you know what? I'm not saying the girls don't because, I don't talk to enough of them to know, because the girls probably do too. They're not, they don't believe in real relationships. They're not committed. So, I have a great relationship with the bad boy, Shane Andrews. You know what? But here's the thing, sorting through the bullshit, as I would call, 90 to 95% of people in wrestling, the guy wrestlers, they're terrible. They're terrible human beings. They're womanizers. They're liars. They're manipulators. They're going to use you for what they can get out of you. They're going to cheat on you. They're going to lie to you. And the smoother they talk, the better they walk. And the more charming and charismatic they seem to be, the worse of a person they are. So that's 90 to 95 out of 100, right? And then say you have 5 left.
Right.
About 3 or 4 of them are going to be gay. They're gay.
Wow,
right?
okay.
You have 1 to 2 out of every 100 that are good guys worth being with, that are going to treat you like a princess and love you unconditionally and just be great people. But do you really want to sort through that 90 to 95% of people who are going to treat you bad, talk to you bad, cheat on you, manipulate you, lie to you, just use you and treat you terribly? No, you don't do it. Don't date a guy in wrestling. Don't do it.
Right. Well, I'm glad you answered that, and that's my biggest Howard Stern question of the interview. So you survived.
Down here from here. You can ask whatever you want.
All right. Well, 2 questions to wrap up. I guess we kind of covered it already, but I'll ask anyway. Mick Foley described WrestleMania 32 as a red-letter day for women's wrestling. He feels that they stole the show at WrestleMania. I know you watch Raw every week. I just wanted to find out your opinion of how Charlotte and the girls have changed wrestling and how they're perceived now. And has it trickled down to the OVW level to where you're more respected?
I absolutely love what's going on with, the women's division and women's wrestling now. And all of that has to be accredited to the women's trainer, Sarah Del Rey. Okay?
Right.
Because she's the one that's behind the scenes. She's so phenomenal, so amazingly talented, and just has such love and passion for wrestling and for teaching that, you give her the girls and let her train them like she wants to do it, and then give the girls the opportunity to use what they've learned after she clears them. You have no choice but to excel. It's not going to do anything but gain attention and just blow up, and as far as the respect level on, for women wrestlers and stuff trickling down to the indies, I wouldn't say that so much, just because of how easy it is for anybody to get in. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many shows I go to, and I'll ask them, I'll be like, well, who's my opponent going to be? And they're like, oh, so-and-so. And I'll Google them, I'll YouTube them, because I like to study who I'm going to be wrestling and see, who they are, what they do, what they know, what they do well, And there's so many times where you can't find anything on them, on YouTube. And they're like, oh, well, they're so-and-so's girlfriend, and she just came in. And they're, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. She's friends with so-and-so. It's not people who are paying their dues. It's not people who are going through training. It's not people who are devoting their life and time and effort. Really, I mean, a lot of the time, it's just girls who started dating a guy who's in wrestling, and because they don't want the guy back there by himself or around all these girls, they want to be a part of it. You know what I mean?
Have you ever not done a match because the person was unsafe to work with?
Have I ever not done a match because the person was unsafe to work with? After getting to the show?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, I've always gone through with it, but I have screened, I guess, my opponents, so and not taken bookings against certain girls, or taken another booking against certain girls. And basically, if I got there and I'd be like, hey, come on, because I always get there super early, and I'd be like, well, let's roll around, let's mess around in the ring, let me fill you out. If they are unsafe and improperly trained, I just kiss it. I keep it simple, stupid. We will do a comedy, funny, ha-ha match, and I won't let them do anything to me that I do not have absolute, complete control of my body at all times.
Brilliant idea. Absolutely. Well, we got two more questions. I think I said that once before, but I'll
That's all right. I can go all night. It's whatever you need. I've got the dad here with me, too, if you want to talk to him.
Oh, good. Well, we can always talk to him in just a moment. Sure. I guess my question for you is, right now on pay-per-view, TNA has Knockouts Knockdown going. Obviously, NXT constantly seems to have an open-door approach. We've kind of covered this already, but now that you are where you are, and you mentioned him already that you guys are engaged, is there still plans for you to try to reach out to that national wrestling level?
I mean, if they were to contact me, I would go. You know what I mean? I'd go and see what it's about, but I'm not exactly, knocking at the door. I haven't, people tell me about, what's the page called? What is it called? There's some WWE Recruit. I don't even have one of those pages. You know what I mean?
Right.
If they happen to, be like, oh, we saw you on OVW, why don't you come in and do NXT, or why don't you come in and do the Knockouts Knockdown, or hey, come do this house show, let us see you, blah, blah, blah. I would do it, but I'm not actively, I ain't actively searching it out. As far as I'm concerned, I'm probably a little bit too old for them now. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Enjoying what you're hearing? Be sure and check out WrestlingEpicenter.com on social media at Facebook.com/WrestlingEpicenter. on Twitter at James Epicenter, and of course, WrestlingEpicenter.com for 24-hour news updates, our interview archives, and all the other information you've come to expect from the Wrestling Epicenter.
Yo, this is your wrestling rock star, Ryan Howe. You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Keep rocking, guys. Listen, take it easy.
Hey guys, before we get to our Shane Andrews interview, I just want to give everybody a heads up. If you're liking what you're hearing, please don't forget to check out WrestlingEpicenter.com. We are converting a lot of our old interviews, in fact all of our old interviews, either into MP3 format or YouTube format or both. So if you like what you're hearing, check out WrestlingEpicenter.com, InteractiveWrestlingRadio.com, or just click the interviews link at WrestlingEpicenter.com and check it out.
This is the bad boy, Shane Andrews, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
But if you wanna unbreak my broken heart, girl, you don't have much time. Take my finger off the trigger, 'cause I'm gonna pull it. It's getting too late for a second shot, girl, before I change my mind. It's just another case of love and bullets.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with me right now is the bad boy, Shane Andrews. Sir, how you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm alive, so I can't complain.
All right. Well, that's always good news to be to be alive and well in the wrestling business after the year we're having.
Right.
There you go. So I guess my first question for you is, you're one of the major stars of OVW right now, the leader of the Bad Boys Club. And I guess my question for you is, as a ring veteran, and I got to think that you are one of the longer-lasting veterans that is currently on the OVW roster, what is it like to work OVW, and how do you enjoy that environment?
I enjoy it because I've kind of taken on, being that I am one of the veterans, there's my tag partner, Randy Royal. He and I started the same year, back in 1999. We have kind of taken on somewhat of like a leadership role, helping out the young guys and stuff like that, and passing down the knowledge that we've been lucky enough to get over the years. So it's a little bit of a change for me, but it's a good change. I like being in that and helping out younger guys and showing them, because I was very fortunate when I was coming up to learn from, some of the best ever to step in a ring. And I mean, I was originally trained by Mr. Fuji.
Mr. Fuji, right? I know. Yeah. That was actually my next question on the list. What was it like training under Master Mr. Fuji?
Very, very rough and very, very intense. It was, he was very hardcore about it. He would weed out the weak, and if you made it through his school, I mean, you were going to be good. I mean, because he didn't, like I said, he would weed out the weak, and like you were, I would see guys come in and they would last one day and they would quit.
Wow. So for all the ribs that we hear about the guys who were on the road with him in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, for all the rib stories and the good sense of humor that he was a hard ass as a trainer then.
Yes, because he loved the business so much. Now, but he would still rib the guys in the school and stuff like that, but not during training. Like when you came in, we did our stretches, we did all the stuff to get warmed up, and it was all business.
Right.
I mean, for 3-4 hours a day, 5 days a week, it was all business. When you were there to train, you were there to train. There was nothing else going on. He was beating on you.
Oh, wow. Well, on the lighter side of Mr. Fuji, you mentioned that he did pull some ribs. Whenever we have an old-timer on, I hate to call them old-timers, but that's kind of where we're at this point, we always ask them about rib stories about Mr. Fuji. Did you have a favorite that you witnessed?
Well, I have one that I was actually a part of. The rib was on me, but I can't say it. He got me good, he would just do stuff like to the guys. Like, I mean, he had me one day tape up one of the guys. The guy brought his bag in, and he left it there and didn't show up to train the next day. So we, like, taped it to the ceiling of the school and stuff. I mean, he would just do stuff like that all the time. I mean, there was more detailed stuff, but stuff that I can't, you know, talk
possibly
about.
incriminating.
Yes.
All right. Well, you had a match on Velocity when you were very, very young into the business. And I guess my question is, being as young as you were when you first appeared on Velocity, do you wish that you had the knowledge and know-how that you do now when you had that opportunity back then?
Okay. I got to clarify this because I get asked about this story all the time.
Okay.
That story, I do not know where it came from, is actually false.
Oh, wow. So Wikipedia lets me down.
Yes. Somebody had mentioned that to me, so I went and checked it out, and I was like, yeah, that didn't, you know, and a lot of the guys that, you know, if they listen to this, they're like, oh man, you should have just went with it. You should have, but, you know, I actually did not wrestle Rikishi on Velocity. I have done multiple extra spots and tryout matches for WWE and TNA as well, but I was never on Velocity.
And I asked Jessie this question, and I'll ask you the same question. Being veterans, being guys and girls who know what you're doing, is the goal still to try to reach out to that national market and appear on, be it Impact Wrestling, though they are a little depleted at the moment, or WWE?
I've been in it over 17 years now. I'm almost 37 years old. For me, that's not my goal anymore. If it was to happen, I wouldn't say no. I would definitely, you know, give it a shot. But anymore, that's not what I, you know, strive for. That's not. I just now, I guess you could say I'm at the point now in my career where I know I'm not gonna. And this is bad to say. I know that chances are I'm not going to make it to WWE or something like that, and I'm okay with it. I've there for the longest, even up to like maybe last year. I mean, I'm like, man, I've got to make it, and it's changed. And now I'm just all about having fun, going out there, doing what I love to do, performing, you know, in front of the crowd, and just still living my dream.
Absolutely, and that's one thing we talked about. It's funny you said living the dream. One of our last things we posted on our YouTube channel was our 2009 interview with Balls Mahoney, who said, to all who liked what I did, thank you for helping me live my dream, and to those who don't, well, fuck you anyway. That's part of my language, but that's a good way to send balls off. But I guess that's a great way to look at it for guys like yourself who haven't made it to the big show just yet, and I still think the window is open for you to make it there. All right, so here we are. We fast forward all the way to 2016, and like you said, you're the leader of the Bad Boys Club with Jessie Belle as your valet. You're in a tag team. How does what you're doing now compare to what you did in terms of a lot of the tag teams you've had in the past?
Well, like it's the Bad Boys Club consists of me, Jessie Belle, Randy Royal, and another guy, Nick Taylor, who's like my best friend. And the thing with them, like I've known Randy for years, I've known Nick for years. So in being friends, it's easy for us we know each other so well, so it's easy to play off each. It's easy, you know. That makes it easy, and it also makes it a lot more fun.
Right.
I've tagged with guys in the past where, you know, I knew them through the business, but like we weren't friends, with the exception of Sean Schultz, who's blowing up right now. Like he's all over the place. He and I originally tagged years ago as the Heat Seekers.
Right.
And that was a fun time as well because we were best friends. When you're tagging with your best friend and people who you love and you care about, it just makes it so much better, so much easier. You just get to go out there and have fun.
Oh, wow. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I love watching OVW. You know, I'm one of the guys, I guess you can call me a wrestling junkie. You know, of course I watch, I don't watch WWE much, believe it or not, but I watch TNA, I watch Lucha Underground, and I always make a point to go on to ovwrestling.com and to check out the OVW show because it's some of the best wrestling out there. from some of the best young and up-and-coming talents, as well as veterans like yourself who are obviously teaching those guys the right way to do things. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me on this interview.
Well, thank you for having me, man.
Hey everybody, this is Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. Remember me? And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
All right, welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. You know, we got a guest coming up in a couple weeks, maybe even as recently as or as soon as next week. And they said, when I was applying to do the interview to them, well, what's the name of your show? And I said, well, that's kind of complicated. Interactive Wrestling Radio is the official name we go by, but obviously we still hold on to and stay close to the original name, which was the Interactive Interview. And we also have, when I upload them to YouTube, I just put Wrestling Epicenter and a number. So I said, so I guess you could say we have three names, but the official one is Interactive Wrestling Radio. So for those who are looking on YouTube and to try to figure out why some shows are under this and under that and under other names, ultimately everything that I put up there is now under Wrestling Epicenter, which will include, when I get to those numbers, Patrick's Pile Driver broadcasts, as well as Weekend Warriors and 3 Count Wrestling, and what else the other shows we had? I can't remember.
Yeah, we had a bunch of different shoot-offs at one point.
We did, because I stopped doing them officially, and it ultimately was me just kind of hitting record and sometimes leaving the room. Yeah, we did a lot of different variations until we kind of just decided to let's just bring it back, so. You're kind of the only one who's stuck around this long, too.
Yeah, I wonder, why is that?
Well, I'm difficult to get along with, and you're easy to get along with.
Sounds like a good deal.
That's probably why. I apologize to anybody if I sound a little bit not as cohesive as normal. I am on antibiotics for gastroenteritis, or whatever the hell it's pronounced. I basically was told that if I didn't go to the doctor, it was going to turn into some kind of a colono or some shit like that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but basically I nearly put a hole in my colon. So I'm on some antibiotics to see if that'll take care of it before I need to take anything more serious. And everything's a little foggy because of it. But we just did some good interviews here. One of which was with the Southern Belle, which is Jessie Belle Smothers, and her fiancé, Shane Andrews. Now, Jessie Belle Smothers, I want to put her over. In the modern era, with the phones you can ask questions to and they answer, and the world of Google, they pulled a high-tech piece of kayfabe that I thought was very cool.
Okay.
And she says it during the interview, so I don't get into it too much. But she met up with Tracy Smothers through her boyfriend, who was her husband, and I think I know who that is, but I'm not going to say on the air because I have no idea if I'm accurate or not. And she met him, Tracy Smothers, through him, and years later, she met him again. Well, a few years later, anyway. Not like she's old. She's only 30, which is younger than me. She met him up with him again, and he said, well, I always thought you were good. You know, let me train under you. And people started thinking that was that was his daughter. So they went to the point of, she was working for a hospital at the time. The doctor that she worked under gave them an official birth certificate that showed that she was Tracy Smothers' daughter. And people bought it, including, you know, guys who knew Tracy Smothers for years, like Tommy Rich. So, in this day and age, to trick guys legitimately and to have some documentation for it in the 21st century, to believe that somebody that's of no relation to you at all could be your daughter, is pretty cool.
That's pretty going above and beyond the Call of Duty.
It does, and they did a really good job with that. She's a good worker, and I think had some opportunities gone her ways that went to some other folks, I think she would have made the best of them. She says in the interview, I'm worried that I might be too old now. Well, she's 30. So if you look at some of the girls on the TNA roster, she's 4, 5, 6 years younger than them. So I don't think she's gonna.
Yeah.
I don't think she's gonna worry about it. Well, with the case of Gail Kim, and obviously Gail Kim's a little bit of a unique case. She's 11 years younger than her. So there's
God, is Gail Kim 41?
I believe she is. Yes.
Jeez. She doesn't look it.
Well, here's where I'll blame the antibiotics. The Asian girls tend to not hit the wall that early.
Okay.
It tends to be that they hit the wall somewhere in their 60s. I don't know why that is, but that's just the way that it tends to go. So they tend.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's science to that, and if you doubt it, just kind of, do a Google image search one day. They'll look hot, and then like the token older Asian lady that was all around in the 90s and all those things, like the woman in Seinfeld who worked at the nail salon and stuff like that. Yeah, that all of a sudden that just happens, and I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
Sounds like a science experiment worth conducting.
It does.
I won't do it, but
don't tell the government that though, because they'll spend like $3 billion on it. Why do Asian women don't age? They'll spend $3 million on that. I don't know. They did a study once why toddlers fall over, and it's like I'm not making that up either. They spent something like $30 million on a study to find out why toddlers fall so much, and it's like I could tell you it's because they don't know how to walk yet. So what's so complicated about that we need to spend taxpayer money on such junk?
Yeah, that does sound like a waste of money. I could have told you it's like because their body's not fully developed, their brain's not fully developed. Those are some of the reasons.
Yeah, all of these reasons are valid. Of course, Al Snow used to have a voicemail message about Uncle Al's laboratory, and he said something along the lines of, today's study is why cats lick themselves. Our answer? Because they're delicious.
Al Snow, who's actually getting, for those of you that still watch TNA, he actually is playing a role in the show now.
Well, I mean, they're down to, he's essentially an agent, but they're down to the point where they need to use them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their roster's so small. It's embarrassingly small.
Oh, it's dwindling. It's getting smaller and smaller. I mean, okay, the shows that I just watched, Bobby Roode and Eric Young are still on them.
Yeah.
And they've since left the company, so,
They've got some young talent, though. I mean, I like this Eli Drake. I think he needs to lose the 5 and 10 store dime store rock imitation when he speaks and be more of his own character. But in terms of look and, having an it factor, not to use a Bobby Roodism, I think he's got a lot of potential. I like Mike Bennett, but he's by no means a newcomer. But I still think him with Maria is a winning package if they can find a way to make it matter in their current format. That'd be a good thing.
And that might be impossible in their current situation, but who knows?
Well, it's kind of like, even if they came across a diamond in the rough, would it matter? Because they just have they need to figure something out. And at this point, it's whoever ends up investing or buying or whoever's in charge, even if it is Dixie, at the end of the day, they need to rebrand.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I absolutely agree.
I think the TNA letters have just been dragged through the mud too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, on a negative note, let's bring up a couple other negative notes since we last spoke. A couple weeks ago, we lost a former guest of our show. I actually posted the interview the night that he passed as a tribute of sorts, and that is Balls Mahoney passed away just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, very sad. Somewhat unexpected, although I don't know. Did they ever rule what the cause of death was there?
No. I don't believe his was drugs. His is one of the
Okay.
rare ones. I don't think it's going to turn out that way. It could. So if it does turn out that way, there's no ha-ha, I was wrong. But I just don't think so. I have a few inside sources because of the New Jersey connection. And they basically said that he had fallen a few weeks ago.
Okay.
He was sick, and he fell a few weeks ago. I don't know what he was doing, gutters or whatever. And when the doctors looked at his hip, they said that he had the hips of an 80-something-year-old man from all the wrestling damage.
Jeez.
So that was part of, he was not bedridden, but he wasn't really getting around that much. And from what I understand, he was sitting there with his mother watching Jeopardy. He was laying on the couch. He was answering questions, which, a lot of people have said, oh, he's not that smart. Well, if you're answering Jeopardy questions, they're not that easy. So I didn't hear it. But apparently he just started coughing and retching, and then, by the time the ambulance got there, he was gone. So it sounds like it might have just been a heart attack. I don't know if there was pain pills involved or anything like that. I can't speak to it. I don't know. But that's all I know.
Wow. Well, whatever happened, it's very sad. Especially for a guy who's a really good-natured, sweet guy.
There's just one more thing. A lot of people have theorized, okay, he had no teeth at the time of his death. Well, he never really had that many teeth to begin with. And that does not necessarily mean crystal meth. And to Sabu's credit, he stood up for him and said, I know Balls, he didn't do meth. It was, those teeth rotted out or were knocked out. So, to his credit, Sabu stood up and defended Balls on that. No, he was a good-natured guy.
Well, he just didn't floss,
There's a lesson to kids out there. Other than don't do drugs, brush your teeth.
Oh, actually, flossing is, from what I've been told, flossing is 60% of the work. So,
I don't think I've ever flossed. Ever.
Really?
No.
How often do you see the dentist?
I don't. I would, when I was a kid I did, but it's kind of like, I can tell you, in 1999 I went to the eye doctor. I have bad vision anyway. And I was 18 and they shined that, they gave me those dilation things, and then they shined that fucking flashlight right in my fucking face. And I remember I saw spots, just spots everywhere for 2 hours after that. And I remember basically cutting a promo when I got home saying, that's it, I'm 18 now and I ain't going back unless my glasses break. And that's kind of it. I've stayed true to that. I've not gone back unless my glasses broke. And that's been kind of my way with the dentist too, and the doctor. And unfortunately for me, the doctor part is partially why I'm in the boat I'm in right now on the antibiotics. So
yeah, regular checkups. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
good thing.
You probably should. Don't follow
my
my
in the butt. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but
yeah, don't follow my example, kids. Keep doing it. And the other thing was, and the other loss was probably more talked about than Balls, which rightly or wrongly, and that was the death of Joni Lauer, a.k.a. Chyna.
Yeah, that one was not a surprise, unfortunately. This is, given the way her life turned out in her post-WWF career, it wasn't surprising that that's kind of how she ended up. It's still very sad, but yeah, it's a very rough situation.
What do you think? Why do you think she couldn't get over it?
When you're depressed, sometimes you make bad decisions, and I think she just made a few too many bad decisions and just never was able to dig herself out of the hole. Maybe she surrounded herself with bad people that enabled those bad habits. I don't know. But it's, it was 15, we're close to 15 years since she left, and she never got over that, what happened down there. And for those of you who don't know what happened, she was dating Triple H, and Triple H cheated on her with Stephanie, and then when the whole thing came to the forefront, obviously Chyna was the one that got the axe when push came to shove. So she got royally screwed over. I mean, that's a pretty bad day. Try to imagine that. You lose your potential family with Triple H, because presumably they were going to have a family and have kids or whatever. Lost her home because she was living with him at the time. Lost her job, lost her fame. I mean, she quite literally lost almost everything in one day.
Yes, that's absolutely true, and she was screwed, and that's the one part that I completely agree with. What I don't understand is why, with her name though, and she fought to get that name, and ultimately she died with that name. She was able to use it. With the ability to do that, why did she blow so many opportunities that were presented to her? She was given chances with TV shows, chances at, even with TNA. You know, she was booked on the Wednesday night pay-per-views to come in and be on Johnny Fairplay's show. She no-showed because she was too screwed up. There's just, I'm glad I never had heartbreak like that. I hope I never ever will. But I just look at her as somebody who needed to be in confinement with somebody to work through the stuff with her, and not. And when I say that, I don't mean Dr. Drew on a reality show. I mean really sit down and get some help. Because if she did, she'd probably still be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the other unfortunate. You mentioned that she was going to do guest spots for TNA or whatever. Well, she got ousted from the WWF at the worst possible time because WCW was gone and ECW was gone. So the two major places of employment to go were not available to her. So that was another thing.
Yeah, she couldn't just show up on ECW or I don't know if WCW would use it. Was it even, at that point, it was right after the merger, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the purchase.
Right after, yeah. It was, she left in, I believe her last match, I want to say it was in May of 2001, because I think it was right before the invasion.
There you go. So, if she would have even been able to, I think ECW would have been a fit for her, honestly, rather than WCW, because they didn't really use women that much. But if she could have showed up somewhere the next week, she would have been a huge name, and they would have marketed that. She would have been the face of that company, most likely.
Yeah.
So, absolutely tremendous loss to wrestling, and I don't take back anything I said on previous episodes of the show when it comes to the Queen of the Ring and how that porno was a disgrace to professional wrestling. But that's a debate to have another day. For today, I send my condolences.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very tough, sad situation. Hopefully, whatever problems she had in her life, hopefully she finds peace, in the afterlife. So it's one of the not so glamorous stories about professional wrestling, that she could be on top of the world. I mean, this was a woman that came in and was able to work with the men believably, like given her, physical stature and everything, she was able to believably work with male competitors. First woman to compete in the Royal Rumble, first woman to win a major singles title. I mean, she was given all of that, and she fit the bill and fit the role perfectly. It's just, for her to be on top of the world and then kind of sink and just fall the way she did, it was pretty tragic.
It was, and I just wish there was something, I thought about it, and we never did interview her, and my only communication was with her manager, and I have no idea if it's the same guy who posted about her passing, so I won't bury him if that is. But I'll tell you this, I called to see about an interview around the time that she was doing one of her few reality shows. And I said, can we try and get an interview? And I believe his exact comment, in a very nerdy voice, I'll say, I'll try to be somewhat polite, was, why would she want to do an interview with you? Well, gee, thanks for insulting me, asshole. That's kind of the way I kind of take those kind of things. I don't like those kind of insults. But I never spoke to her. I never had any direct contact with her whatsoever. So I can't even react to what kind of person she was. All I can tell you is everything I've read say she was one hell of a nice person.
Yeah, and when she had her fall from grace and everything, a lot of people within wrestling were shocked by it. Like, she's doing drugs and doing all this other stuff, and they were like, that's not the Jody that we knew. So, obviously, you know, I guess let her life serve as an example, or it'd be a lesson to you know, if you're going through something rough or you're depressed about something, go get help.
Yeah,
you know,
see someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
if you need the help, go get it. It's, I guess you could almost apply that to the Chris Benoit situation, too. If he really was as messed up as everybody says he was, and he had, like, the brain of an 80-year-old man or whatever, and he was super depressed and was, you know, whatever was going on, it's like, all right, get the help if you need it, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I find myself arguing about that far more than I should have to, the Benoit thing, but what are you going to do? I mean, there's a lot of things that could have been done differently.
Oh, that goes without saying.
Yeah. Anyway, since our last show, we had WrestleMania.
Did you ever watch it?
Parts.
It's, oh my God, what to say about this show? It's one of the weirdest WrestleManias I've ever watched.
Why was it weird?
What'd you say?
Why weird?
The booking was weird. Okay, I'll tell you the major problem with it more than anything else. The show was too goddamn long.
Is that including the kickoff or not including the kickoff?
I'll even say not including the kickoff, because the show started at, like, the main show, I believe, started at 7, and it didn't end until almost midnight. So we're talking like a 5-hour show without the 2-hour kickoff. And it was way too long. By the time you got to the two main events, I was like, all right, guys, can we wrap this up, please? This is getting ridiculous.
It wasn't like they had a lot to fit in either, but, you know, big blow-offs to stories, because a lot of it was not well built either.
No, and a lot of that, and I'm going to try and play devil's advocate a little bit, a lot of that came from the fact that so many people got hurt. But,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but still, it was like, did Roman Reigns and Triple H need to be half an hour long? I mean, did that match really need to be as long as it was? Forget the fact that nobody likes Roman Reigns as a babyface. Forget the fact that nobody gave a shit that he won the title. You know, did the match really need to be as long as it was? Because that match, it felt like it went on forever.
If he was going to win, I would have done a Goldberg match with him, in all honesty. If they decided, okay, you're going to win the title, just let him do his couple finishers and pin him. You know, literally just let it be a squash. Because what would be the difference anyway?
Yeah, I mean, the crowd would have been pissed either way, so...
Yeah.
It's like, who gives a crap?
And I didn't care. That was a very awkward finish. Everybody keeps putting over when the nearly 50-year-old son of the owner jumped off the top of a cage.
Which was insane.
It was insane. I mean, it was a good moment on a pay-per-view, but...
I mean, Shane worked way harder in that match than any human being should have to, because I'll be honest, if it wasn't for, like, the 2 or 3 things that Shane did, that match would have been complete garbage. Because Undertaker looks old as shit. Like, he looks terrible now.
Well, yeah, he does. I mean,
I mean, we said it last year, we said it the year before, but it's like, dude, seriously, it's okay if you retire. We're fine.
Yeah.
Please retire.
I mean, you had a great career. You had a great run, but
mm-hmm.
It's kind of like going to see Deep Purple now. Like, here comes an 80-year-old short-haired guy, you know. Jesus Christ, dude. It's all right. We remember how great you were. Just, it's enough. Go ahead. You can retire now.
We're fine. We're all fine here.
Yeah.
And of course, and again, speaking to the weird booking of the whole situation, it's like, all right, you look at Roman Reigns and Triple H, it's like, all right, we all know Roman's going to win the title, but they've got to do something. I was thinking, it's like, they have to do something to save it, because they know the fans don't like Roman, so they can't just have him win completely clean with no surprises, no bells and whistles or anything, and that's exactly what they did. I thought, maybe they'll do a heel turn. Maybe they'll do... just something, any of that run-in or just something to kind of sugarcoat the whole situation. They didn't do anything. It was just kind of like, wow, they just went with the worst possible scenario. Okay. And then you look at the Hell in a Cell, Undertaker inexplicably goes over, and then you look at Raw the next few weeks, and Shane's in charge of the show anyway, so what was the point of Undertaker going over?
Wouldn't it make more sense? Well, you're right, and that's what I mean by the finish was awkward, because there's that spot, and then that's like an awkward finish to the whole thing, because, I don't know, I didn't expect anything else after that, don't get me wrong, but it just came off weird on screen to me, the way that played out.
I feel like if you jump off top of the cage and you miss and you hit the table, it's like, all right, that should be the finish.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like...
No, I don't disagree with that, but it just kind of came off as prolonged.
The whole match felt that way.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that... I even bitched about it, you know, WrestleMania 18 for the GameCube. I remember I was Hulk Hogan against Trish Stratus in a Hell in a Cell, and I knocked her off the top of the cell, and she fell through the announce table. And no jokes about Hogan's age or slowness, but by the time I climbed down the cage, she was back on her feet. It's like, whoa, there's no realism here. There you go.
Well, you know, the Young Bucks, they definitely operate off video game mechanics if you watch any of their matches, so, you know, it's a thing.
Yeah. You don't seem to be a big fan of the Young Bucks lately.
I just watched, I've been catching up on some of the shows I missed. I watched Supercard of Honor 10, and they're, on night one, they're in the main event against the Motor City Machine Guns, and I swear to God, same fucking match every single time. And everybody gives them like 4 or 5 stars every single time. It's like, guys, they have the same fucking video game pinball match every single time they work. I mean, come on. How am I the only one that sees this?
You're not, and I think that it's a case of they've endeared themselves to a very adamant market that will then defend them to the end of time. It's the Ric Flair, you know, approach, to where they've managed to endear themselves. So even though if anybody else did the exact same thing that they did, they'd be panned and ridiculed and destroyed. But since it's them, and they've somehow managed to endear themselves to those people, then they're okay.
Okay, fine.
That's how it works. It's like politics. It's like politics.
Oh yeah, everything's politics. But
it is. Yeah, I won't get into that whole kind of thing, but I'm just saying it's like politics. You know, you at the regional or national level, whatever. If you're endeared to people, you'll get away with stuff that you wouldn't get away with if you're a newcomer. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, what else happened at WrestleMania? I'm trying to...
A good women's match.
Oh, the women's match was the best part of the whole show. I mean, that goes without saying. Yeah, I thought Sasha and Charlotte and Becky all went out there, and I thought, first time in WrestleMania history, I thought the women had the best match on the show.
Yeah, I'd agree. Hey, do you remember, was there a women's title match at WrestleMania 10?
Yes, there was.
Okay. It was Leilani Kai against Alundra Blaze, am I right?
Correct.
Okay. Was that on the main show or on the pre-show?
It was on the main show.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was there.
Don't ask me how I remember these things off the top of my head, but...
I was there, and I spoke to Leilani Kai just recently, and she wants to do an interview, and I talked to her about it. And we were talking about that match, and I was mentioning it, and I mentioned it off the top of my head, but I could not remember for the life of me if that was where that placed on the card. So I kind of wanted to make sure that it was actually on the card and not on like a pre-tape match or something. I don't remember.
No, it was on the main card.
Yeah.
Luna Vachon was on that card too.
But she just managed Bam Bam, right?
No, she was Bam Bam's tag team partner. It was a mixed
right.
tag. It was Doink and Dink versus Luna and Bam Bam.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. Again, don't ask me how I know these things off the top of my head.
It was on your birthday. That's
Good point.
That's probably why I remember it. Yeah.
Yep.
But I haven't gone back and watched that one in probably 15 years. So.
Yeah, I actually rewatched a bunch of them. Not all 31 previous to WrestleMania 32, but I did rewatch a good handful of them this year. So I'm pretty. A lot of them are fresh on my mind.
Cool. That was. I remember that was a big. It was awesome to be at a WrestleMania, but it didn't feel complete yet. They hadn't really gotten past the Hogan era yet.
No, it took a few years. It wasn't until 14, really.
I would say, yeah, that was the first time that I was like, all right, they're going to be all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, if you look at the years in between, it was kind of like, okay, they got Brett, they got Taker, they've got Shawn, but,
Yeah.
it was kind of like...
Yeah, even Luger they had for a while, and that was...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they've got some guys, it's just that there's the direction and the spark just isn't quite there yet. And then once they got to WrestleMania 14, I felt like they got it.
Oh, yeah, that was... Even I, not a fan of the Attitude Era, even I say that was one of their better ones, so...
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about what else we got to talk about, because I got nothing going on right now.
There's not a whole lot else going on. I mean, Lucha Underground's still going strong. Matanza's the world champion. He's just basically killing everybody left and right.
Yeah, I think he just got hurt last night.
Well, he did get hurt in that match. He did get hurt, but it was nothing serious, so he's not going to be, missing from the team. Yeah. So I think they're going to be okay there. NXT, Samoa Joe just won the NXT title at 11.
That's true. I did hear about that. Yep.
Yeah, which makes me think that maybe Finn Balor could be moving up to the main roster sometime soon.
That's been the rumor, but then he apparently did a long-winded speech last night at one of the at the Poughkeepsie, New York show, I think it was, where he basically said that he wants to stay in NXT. So, but then again, the key words are "wants to" as opposed to what's going to happen. So, I think that might have been done to curb some of the news about Chyna, though, as well.
Do you think so?
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. They kind of do calculated things like that. So
would Triple H's baby do something to curb the news that shines a negative light on him and his family? Yes.
Yeah.
That's basically how I feel about it. Yeah,
do you think Triple H would ever admit in an interview that he dated Chyna?
Yeah, does he deny it?
He never mentions it. That's the thing. If you see some of his Triple H DVDs and the documentaries on there where Chyna's brought up or mentioned, they'll say yeah, she was a great physical specimen and blah 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 and all this other stuff. And I saw her and I saw great potential in her and blah blah blah. And it's dude, we know you were dating her. I mean, come on.
Well, at the time he did interviews where he admitted it. So I mean, the documentation is out there where he talked about it. So.
Mm-hmm. It just feels like ever since she was ousted from the company, it's nope, she never existed. And she was kind of the first one that ever happened to.
Yeah. Well.
Where it was oh, you never, even before, cause Savage, I don't know, I felt maybe it's because he was still in WCW and still, somewhat fresh on people's minds, but it didn't feel like they went out of their way to ignore Savage at that point. So.
Yeah, or if they did, it was because he was working for a rival company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. All right. Well, our condolences once again to the family of Balls Mahoney as well as to the family of Chyna. And hope everybody enjoyed this interview. Next week we have a pretty big guest coming up, somebody who worked with Chyna. I'll leave it at that. And we'll announce that when we have it in the can because I have learned now never to count my chickens before they hatch. But once we have that in the can, we will announce it on the Wrestling Epicenter newsline and Facebook page. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And until then, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Hold on a sec.